welcome back to the channel. I'm Michelle, and today I want to share with you what I'm reading and what my kids are reading to learn about social emotional learning this month. If you're new here, I have an 8-year-old daughter, a 4, almost 5-year-old daughter, and a 1.5-year-old son. The theme for our subscription box, and again, if you're new, I get this Little Justice Leader subscription box. It's a subscription box, social justice themed subscription box aimed at children. Again, not sponsored, buy this with my own money. Really love the program, that's why I talk about it a lot. But the specific theme this month was social emotional learning, which I think is a great idea because I think as homeschoolers sometimes we forget that aspect of school. I know when my daughter was in public school, the counselor of the school often has social emotional themes that he talked about with the students, such as not just bullying, but emotions, mindfulness, different things they would cover. So I think it's a great idea as homeschoolers that we also cover social emotional learning. So what is social emotional learning? It's using knowledge and skills to help manage emotions, understand emotions, but it's more than just emotions. It's having healthy relationships, understanding what a healthy relationship is, understanding yourself, your own identity, being able to understand and show empathy towards others. So it's all these different aspects of it, and it's not just for children. It's something definitely that adults need to think about as well. So that's why I really appreciate that the resources that the box had was not just for kids, but for adults. They usually give a book list, recommendation book list in it. And I always go to my local library, check out what's available. I check Hoopla, different things like that, and I read the books. So I thought I'd share the books with you because it's been a really great month. So I'll start with the books recommended for adults. So the first one is The Whole Brain Child, 12 Revolutionary Strategies to Nurture Your Child's Developing Mind. Now this is more a nonfiction book talking about the science of, how kids' brains work. And what I really like is that it talks about how obviously we have two sides of our brain, the left, the more literal side of our brain, and then the right, the more emotional side of the brain. And for children, how you think of it as they're in a boat going down a river. On the left side is your logical reasoning side, your right is your emotional side, and they're zigzagging between those two sides. Often it's veering to one side more than the other. And I really like that illustration because it talks about, their brains are still developing. For example, it talks about how they have the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain. The upstairs brain is, the ability to reason, understand consequences, different things like that is still developing when they're young. In fact, I don't think it stops developing until you're in your mid-20s. So that's part of their brain is still under construction. And then the downstairs part of your brain, the spinal cord, different things like that, or your brainstem, has more primitive things like the flight and fright thing, there's a tiger, I'm scared in the forest, and it gives you that instant reaction, that emotional reaction to help you survive. So dealing with more of those primitive parts of our brain that they access so regularly because, again, this part of their brain is still under construction. So it talks about different things like that. It does give you examples and real life examples, which I really appreciate. But what I really like in the back is it has this little cheat sheet about what you can do in a situation, because the ultimate goal is you want your child to integrate using their left and their right brain together. Because one of the ways you can do that is when your child is having an emotional reaction to something, to not come at them with your left logical brain, but to use your right emotional brain. Come emotion to emotion, because if they're in an emotional state, they're not ready to deal with the logic of that necessarily right away. So if you come at them with an emotional response, and I'm not saying, screaming or anything, emotion like that, but understanding what they're going through and showing that compassion towards them, and then being able to redirect that into integrating their left side. Okay, what can we do about that? So again, it has this little cheat sheet in the back of different strategies to use. I also really like that it has it grouped by ages in the back, so different things you can do for different age groups, because obviously a 4-year-old is going to have different emotional range than my 8-year-old, what they can handle, what they can manage. So I really appreciate that. Great book. This is another one I got. This is a fiction book, and I'm not a big fiction reader, but I really enjoyed this. This is called Fish in a Tree, and it's about a girl named Allie, and she moves a lot because her father's in the military. She's in 6th grade, and she has trouble in school, and it's revealed later somewhere in the middle of the book that she has dyslexia, and it wasn't caught all these years. Probably one of the reasons because she moved a lot. But reading is extremely difficult for her. Doing her assignments is difficult. Writing is extremely difficult for her. And it really goes into telling the story of what it's like to be a kid, living with just being a kid. I think as adults we often forget how hard it is, how simple things to us are extremely difficult for kids, dealing with, humiliation and shame and different emotions like that. And it was a really, really good read. And she meets a teacher that helps her through some of this, but it gives you a perspective, and it brings you back to that place that I think a lot of us as adults forget, of the difficulties of being a child, managing the emotions, and all the things that come up with growing up. So I highly recommend that book as well. Now for our Read Aloud, this was actually part of our Torchlight curriculum, and it fit perfectly into this month's theme of social emotional learning, and it's Crenshaw. And this is about a boy, again I think he's in 6th grade, so that just must be an emotional time, Jackson, and he's going through a difficult time in his family. His father was diagnosed with MS and he can't work. His mother was let go of her teaching job and has to work multiple part-time jobs, but it comes down to the fact that they don't have a lot of money. They don't sometimes have food to eat. He talks about when he was younger, they had to live in their van. And when he was younger and had to live in their van, he started seeing this imaginary friend, Crenshaw, which is a huge black cat. And Crenshaw helped him through these difficult times. And again, what I really like about this book is it takes you back to being a child and understanding the difficulties it is. I think as adults, we often are quick to say, we dismiss their problems as kids because we deal with a different set of responsibilities and problems on a day-to-day basis. So we think, how hard can it be, when your sister steals your Barbie, or you didn't get that thing you wanted. But especially tying in the brain book, to them it's difficult because they lack the fully developed brain to really get through some of these things logically, so they often have an emotional reaction to things. And what I really like about the book is the main character, Jackson, doesn't hold back about his emotions. He describes what it's like to go through these difficult things. And I remember reading a review that someone said Torchlight's books are pretty heavy and it can be depressing at times, and they want more lighthearted things. And I didn't understand that, because the book even talks about how kids yearn for the truth. How as parents it's very easy for us to want to shield them for things because we know what the world can really be like and we don't want to expose them to that. But I also think that children are very intuitive and they know a lot more than they let on, and often they'll be grappling with these feelings, and because children are in a state where they're kind of like the world revolves around them, that's just naturally where their brains are. Again, not to fully develop yet, that they often will see problems and internalize it as it's their fault. That's why you often see, in family situations when there's a divorce, the first thing you say to your child is, it's not your fault. They internalize those things, and how is this my fault because this is my world? And I think when we don't talk to our children about these difficult things, things like that can happen. They can think, these are my problems, this is my fault. So I definitely think we should talk about these feelings in an age-appropriate way. I think Crenshaw brings this conversation very naturally up, and it is a sad, difficult thing to talk about, a family not having food, about being homeless, but I think it also gives your child a larger perspective. And then there was even a part in the book where Jackson was talking about how it's hard to live in an adult world because you follow adult rules and nobody understands how difficult it is to be a kid. My daughter actually said yes out loud. So again, it brings you back to that part of growing up where it's difficult and that adults don't understand. But the main part that Jackson really wants his parents to understand is he just wants to be told the truth. His parents will often, when he asks serious questions like, are we gonna have to move? They'll say, it'll be fine. And they do something silly, like make a silly face to just try to distract him from what's really going on. But that's not what he wants. He wants to know what's gonna happen, right? So again, wonderful read, highly recommend it. Really good discussion, conversation starters. Now for specifically kids reading. This came in our Little Justice Leaders box. It's called Breathe Like a Bear, 30 Mindful Moments for Kids to Feel Calm and Focused. I think this is really helpful, especially for adults as well. And it just has little quick breathing exercises, like a bear breath. So you go through and you act like the character and you mindfully breathe. And it's teaching you to focus on your breath and how that can affect you and calm you down. So we do one of these each day and it's really fun and it's effective. It helps me as well. And then the next two are actually from the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, which if you're not a part of, it's a free program from birth to 5 years old. Your child will get a free book every month. So we did that with my oldest, and then my 2 youngest now are a part of it. But it's a really great program. I highly recommend it. But this one is called I'm a Rainbow, and it just goes through identifying different emotions with a color, which I think is really helpful for the younger kids, especially when using the words can be difficult at times because again, they're very emotionally in that part of the brain that sometimes identifying a color could be easier. So are you feeling like this or this? So I really enjoy that book. Again, this is another Imagination Library book. This is The Rabbit That Listened, and I think this is really good because it goes through a little boy who's building a tower and the tower gets knocked down. It goes through all these different animals who try to help him, and they represent, different things people try to do when they help you. So for example, the chicken said, I'm sorry this happened, let's talk about it, but he doesn't want to talk about it, so the chicken goes away. And then the bear comes by and he's like, oh, someone broke your stuff and that makes me so mad, let's get mad about it. And he doesn't want to get mad, he just sits there and gets upset. It goes through every different animal, representing different things people try to do when you're upset. And again, none of those worked, but eventually the rabbit comes by, and the rabbit just sits by him and does nothing. And then eventually when the boy's ready, he starts to talk to the rabbit about all the different things. And he goes through all those different emotions, the angry, the sad, and then he just hugs the rabbit. And it's a really sweet book about sometimes you just need someone there to listen. You don't need someone to tell you what to do, how to solve the problem, or whose fault it is. You just need someone to listen. So I thought that was a really cute book. The last one is, I got these social emotional learning cards. I heard your feelings. I've talked about these in the past too. I think they're really good to talk about and bring up conversations on social emotional learning. So again, it's just cards. Has a picture on it, and it has discussion questions about it. So how do they feel? Look at their faces for clues. Just talking about how we can recognize emotions, how we can help people, again, dealing with that empathy aspect with children. And my kids really enjoy doing it, so there's all different types of situations that are on here. It's a really nice way to start that conversation with kids. So that is it. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, leave them down below.